Eco-leader Paul Hawken expressed his deep belief in young people's capacity to influence the future in his newest book, Regeneration: Ending the Climate Crisis in One Generation. He says, "We and all living beings thrive by being actors in the planet's regeneration, a civilizational goal that should commence and never cease. We practiced degeneration as a species, and it brought us to the threshold of an unimaginable crisis. To reverse global warming, we need to reverse global degeneration. Regeneration has two meanings. It refers to regenerating life on Earth, and it refers to a new generation of humanity coming together to reverse global warming." Our next speaker will share the story of her work, where waste is not the exception, but the norm. Regina Anderson is the executive director of the Food Recovery Network. Over the past decade, this groundbreaking organization has grown from an idea by 4 students at one university to a network of 180 participating campuses in 48 states. Their work to respond to an urgent need and their practice of the art of sustainability through waste reduction is an encouraging example of contribution by a young generation that reflects Paul Hawken's belief. Please welcome Regina Anderson, along with a member of the FRN team, Yash Desai.
Thank you so much, Evangeline, and thank you to all the program participants. And I definitely want to give a big shout out to Matt, who just spoke. I am a huge fan of Matt's. You saw me in the chat. Encouraging everyone to get to know Matt. He's just an incredible human being and new leader of this current generation. I also wanted to start off my conversation today with a land recognition. I live here in Washington, D.C. Food Recovery Network's headquarters are here in Washington, D.C., and we sit on the Piscataway Conoy tribal lands. And thank you to our ancestors and current Piscataway Conoy for being stewards of our land, water, and air. My name is Regina Anderson, and thank you all for your time today. And I cannot wait for you all to talk to Yash in just a second. I am just going to give a little bit of background about Food Recovery Network, and then Yash, when I turn things over to Yash, he will give you a bit of background about himself and why he was involved with FRN, and from his positionality, the work that we've been able to do together. So as Evangeline mentioned, Food Recovery Network did start by a few college students at the University of Maryland. In 2011, we became a national nonprofit. And I'm actually happy to say today, we are on 193 campuses across the country and here in the district. And through the power of college students who recognized, as Matt was talking about, some of these big global issues that we all sort of are grappling with and feel the weight of these issues on our shoulders, the students understood that they actually could take this seemingly big problem of food waste, and I can give you a few stats about our food waste in just a second, but they could break it down into smaller pieces by some behavior change. And so through recovering food from their college campuses and surrounding businesses, this is fresh foods, prepared foods, and now we actually are also on farm fields. Through the power of college students and the 4,000 people in our network, alums like Yash, businesses, corporate dining events, we've been able to recover more than 5.3 million pounds of food that was perfectly good food that would have been destined to go to landfill. So this was food that maybe at 5 o'clock was perfectly fine to eat, but that at 5:01, as that meal event was concluding, was destined to go to landfill, to be thrown away. So the students at the University of Maryland saw this as a big problem, not only because this was perfectly good food, but as stewards in their local community, they saw every day the need of people in their communities who, quite frankly, just didn't have enough food to eat. And to put that into context, today, there are right now, freeze frame, 42 million people in the United States who do not have enough food to eat, who do not have access to food every day. They do not have enough resources to obtain the food that they need for themselves and for their families. And this might sound like, because it is, a very big number, and it could also feel very suffocating. But I want all of you to know that consider yourselves invited into the Food Recovery Network family, as a way to directly combat that today, with your efforts, you, like Yash, can ensure that people receive the food that they deserve. Food is a right, and we believe that here at Food Recovery Network, especially when we think about the communities that are facing the most food insecurity. And I invite everyone to go to our website. We have information about our data-driven model to recover food, again, from college campuses, and to directly donate that food to local nonprofits that are on the front lines every single day combating hunger. So these are homeless shelters, soup kitchens, domestic violence shelters, food pantries, churches, all of these amazing nonprofits that are tackling food insecurity every single day. And we saw, before the pandemic, about 38 million people were food insecure. That number ballooned up to 54 million, and now it's settled at around 42 million. And at Food Recovery Network, we say that is wrong. That is a design flaw, that 42 million people don't have enough resources, especially when we consider that we are throwing away at this moment in time about 35% of all the food that we generate. And with that, it's the resources that it takes to produce that food, to grow that food, to water that food, to transport that food. And just to give you a little bit of context, again, because all of you are invited to be part of this solution in a variety of different ways, and our website has many of them. But in our landfill, which is the majority place where food goes, food is the number one thing in our landfills. When food breaks down, it does create excess CO2 and other greenhouse gases that we know is directly warming up our environment, warming up our earth. And here in the United States, when we look at the neighborhoods, the communities, the zip codes where people are most food insecure, those are also the neighborhoods that are being impacted by environmental racism. So if we are able to capture all of this food, as Evangeline said, at FRN, we want food recovery to be the norm. It is very easy to put together a food recovery plan for your institution, for your cafeteria, for your event. And again, Yash can tell you all about that. It is very easy to do. FRN is here as a resource. If we can do that and give that precious food to the people who deserve it, that represents about 4% of the greenhouse gases that we are emitting, that we know is directly warming up our environment. All the amazing food, precious food that we are wasting every day, and that is at every single step of the food supply chain. So that's on the farm fields where FRN is working to glean food. That is in transportation, where we have many colleagues in the industry that are working to ensure that we don't lose as much food, and that's transportation. There's food that when it's in the grocery stores, lots of food is being thrown out that way. And so with working on date labeling provisions, we're hoping to recapture some of that precious food there. But all along the way, all along the supply chain, we are wasting food unnecessarily, and that results in about $408 billion that is being lost, and that is being lost in a lot of different ways. And so at Food Recovery Network, we know through the power of people, through the power of community, that we can do something about this. And so I want to turn things over to Yash really quickly, but again, I know everyone is learning so much today about some of the issues. I don't want anyone to feel overwhelmed. I want you to feel empowered. I want you to know that there are tons of resources, and all the speakers today are part of those resources to help us in the fight to do better, to be stewards of our environment, of our waterways. And it doesn't have to totally revolutionize how you live your life. There are small things that we can all do, including getting involved in advocacy. Maybe finding out, does your community have a food policy council? Because some of these solutions are things that we can do every single day, but some of the solutions really do require the attention of our policymakers to do better for all of us. And if they don't know for some reason, when we talk to them, now they know. As the amazing philosopher Notorious B.I.G. would say, you don't know, now you know. So at FRN, our bedrock work is feeding people every single day. Making sure that there are food recovery plans in place. But this is part of our systems change work. As I was saying, with policy, with advocacy, with raising our voices collectively, We are trying to change the system when we think about who doesn't have enough food. So the 42 million people, Food Recovery Network is working on advocacy and partnerships to ensure the economic security of the 42 million people who need our help and who deserve this food. So Yash, please, I would love to turn things over to you to tell everyone a bit more about yourself and your experience at Food Recovery Network.
Absolutely. Thank you, Regina. And thank you, everybody else, for having me today. My name is Yash. I'm currently in San Antonio. I'm in medical school, but I want to talk to you about my experience. I'm an undergraduate at the University of Houston. For those unfamiliar with Houston, U of H is nested in this community called the Third Ward, where it's a historic community that's just kind of has struggles with poverty, food insecurity. It's a medical desert, it's a food desert. Yet U of H is nested on this campus or on this community where we have an abundance of food. We have cafeterias, we have restaurants, we have on-site restaurants and convenience stores that have all this food. And not only do they have this food, they have this great wastage of food. So when I went to U of H, one of the first things I noticed was as you drive around the community, you see 2 to 3 food shelters, food shelters, and you see homeless communities, you see families lining up outside of satellite food banks. Yet when you enter campus and you look into any trash can in the cafeteria at the restaurants, you just see piles and piles of food being wasted. So that's when I first got my experience with Food Recovery Network and got in touch with Regina and the organization. And I decided, that was my inspiration to take action. And that's when I started my official chapter at U of H. Initially, we did have issues with getting restaurants on board, getting cafeterias on board to donate food, but we're able to work to get a lot of students, a lot of volunteers who are also passionate, Food Serve Safe certified, get these restaurants on board and set up kind of partnerships with local food shelters to get this access food that was being wasted to these locations so it could be made to a good use. And it just kind of had a snowball effect. We eventually got to a point where we just had so many restaurants reaching out to us about their leftover food that we didn't have volunteers to kind of supply those needs. And over time, it just became this huge project at the university where we're on a mission to make the campus, food waste free. And over the 4 years I was there, we were able to recover over 50,000 pounds of food, so about 47,000 pounds of meals, and to the community that needed it the most. And we saw the effect that this had on the community when we're no longer just supplying, food bank food, pantry foods, or non-perishables. We're supplying them with produce. We're supplying them with fresh fruits and vegetables, or prepared meals to families that didn't have the resources to prepare the raw produce. So as a combination of this, we saw a long-term effect on our community where families were no longer having to go to bed hungry. They were able to have a consistent resource with us where they were able to get foods, where they were able to feed their kids after school and no longer relying on the school system for meals. So Food Recovery Network has had this long-lasting impact on that community. And on its way currently right now, U of H is close to being food waste free with all these organizations still continuing there, all the restaurants on board, the cafeterias on board. And we're able to take a lot away from that. And it's a simple message that, if you identify the problem that's there and the easy solution that's present, the FRN helps kind of bridge that problem. It's a simple solution that's out there to fix the problem over time. And my takeaway from my experiences with that is, especially being in medicine right now, is it's something we address with all of our patients day to day is, do they have food shortages? Is there impacting their health? Is this impacting their community? And what can we do from our role to address that and help fix that and see what consequences it has on their lifestyle and health overall. So I highly encourage anyone to check out Food Recovery Network, kind of question if they have an involvement from their businesses, from organizations, or from their daily household and see what they can do in regards of food waste and how they can make an impact on their community. Back to Regina.
Great. Thank you so much, Yash. And I just put it into the chat. I mean, I hope everyone heard that, Yash is currently in medical school right now. And, so thank you for taking the time to talk with everyone about your experience with FRN and what you were seeing when you were an undergrad at Houston and now what you're seeing in, when in your community in medical school. So for all of us, if you have an undergraduate higher ed institution that you feel connected to, we'd love to ensure that there's an FRN chapter on that college campus if there isn't one already. Students can be involved, dining partners are involved. We want to make this easy for everyone, but also the focus is on what are the needs of that community and how can we make that recovery program work for that community. And in particular, with that systems change work that I was mentioning, at Food Recovery Network, we have our data that really does show through maps where on anyone's, well, we've done 10 states thus far, and we're working on doing the rest of the United States. But where is there the most surplus food? And where are there the communities that have 20% or higher food insecurity? And can we make sure that we are bringing that food directly into those communities? Because oftentimes, we think about hunger is in every single zip code, sadly. And that is a design flaw that we can design it better. But when we think about the communities that have the most food, sometimes what happens is the surplus food sort of gets circulated into those same communities, and it's not being driven into the communities that don't have as much resources, even though they are doing their darndest to get the resources that they need. But they need people to give them the call to say, hey, we have a pallet of XYZ fresh produce, or hey, we know that this grocery store is about to let go of these amazing bags of spinach, or whatever it might be, that we need to make sure that we're bringing that food to those that need it the most. And Efron is dedicated to doing that. So thank you all for your time. Again, you're invited to join us. We're a really wonderful group. You get to hang out with folks like Yash. So thank you for your time. And I look forward to talking with all of you, and please be safe.